I found a sheet of paper from 1528 with a list of dates for anomalous events written on it. The list goes up to 2029. I found it while replacing some floorboards in my bedroom. It was a metal case that had become rusted over who knows how long. I opened it up expecting to find some old books, an old map or whatever. What I found instead were 3 sheets of paper. Each one of them were yellow, clearly well worn out by time. The year 1528 was written on the bottom right corner of each of them. 2 of the 3 pages were filled with writing in some language I wasn't fluent in. The 3rd page, however, had writing that I could understand. It was a list of calendar dates with names beside them. The earliest one was January 16th, 1529, with the name Kingston written beside it. There were dozens of these calendar dates and names on the page, 2 rows of them side by side. I flipped the page over to find that there were just as many calendar dates on that side as well. They too were listed in 2 rows. The front side of the page had dates going up to March 16th, 1765. The back side had dates going up to January 1st, 2029. I was curious as to who these were for. It looked like a randomized list. Whoever wrote these wrote them for a reason. But what was it? The closest day to the present day was April 29th, 2023, which, at the time I read it on the paper, was the next day. I didn't think anything of it at the time. It looked totally arbitrary to me. But what were the surnames all about? I set the pages back into the box. Then I went on with my business. The next day, or more specifically earlier today, I was sweeping my kitchen while letting some music play on the TV. As I went on with the cleaning, the song that was playing slowed down. At first, I thought it was a glitch. There was no version of that song that suddenly slowed down like that halfway through. The song got abnormally slower and slower until it sounded like animalistic screeching. I turned my attention to the TV. The screech-like noises gave me chills, so I changed the channel to a different music channel. The same screeching was playing on that one too. I texted my friend Ashley, but she told me they weren't hearing any screeching. It's just SZA. I turned the TV off. In the absence of the TV's noise, I heard an ominous hum. It sounded like it was coming from outside. I walked up to the window, but it was too foggy to see anything. As I pondered the source of the noise, a cracking noise came from behind me, and I saw that my TV screen was cracked. Right in the middle of all the cracks was something that confused me. Teeth. There were regular, human-like teeth sticking out of the screen. I heard something shatter behind me. I turned around and saw the ceiling light cover had shattered all over the floor. One of the pieces had a similar set of teeth growing out of it, with veins growing inside the glass, which appeared to be melting. What on this green earth is happening? I then heard what sounded like the shattering of a mirror in the bathroom. I was already weirded out by what I'd seen so far. I didn't need to use the bathroom, so I wasn't going in there. There was no way I wasn't going to talk to anybody about this. I took a picture of the teeth, then sent it to my friend. A minute later, he responded to me with a string of messages. They're everywhere. I was just bitten by a shard of a kitchen plate. I'm bleeding right now. They bite? Once that was implied, I went cold. I swept up the shards of glass and dumped them in the trash bin. One of the plates in the cupboard made a sound. Not seeing this stuff happening was unnerving. I opened the cupboard and took the plate, As I set it down on the counter, I took a look at the sight. The plate was shattered, with one of the pieces, of course, being adorned with teeth. This time, red veins were protruding from the piece as the piece melted. Maybe melted isn't the right term. More like it changed material, if that makes sense. The roar of the helicopter went right over the house. After it passed, there was a knock at the door, followed by a woman's voice. "Please answer the door, this is an urgent matter." I answered the door. A woman in a suit stood at my doorstep, holding an FBI badge. A scientific division of the FBI has detected a brash anomaly within this town, and so we'll be closing it off, she said with urgency. You cannot leave this town without special permission. You will be notified face to face when the quarantine has been lifted. So, this is about the teeth, I said. We understand the teeth are concerning and will be doing whatever we can to stop them from growing, she said. Oh, I'll definitely be keeping up with the news, I said. We're going to be keeping this investigation along with the anomaly under seal until we've determined it's appropriate to release information about them to the public, she said. Have a good day. She walked away into the fog. I shut the door, thinking about the fact that the government was watching this. A slight pit formed in my stomach. This situation was so special. The FBI had to cover it up for a while. Most people wouldn't know about this event for years, considering the FBI only releases information when there's a public interest group, or an FOIA request remanded by the Justice Department. Where does this anomaly even come from? As I thought to myself, the bag covering the inside of the trash bin began moving, until there was this tiny little ripping noise. Then I saw movement in the corner of my eye. It was the plate shard, crawling by the sink. Its teeth were moving in a biting motion. A pit formed in my stomach. I reached into the cupboard for a cup to place on the thing like it was a bug, but every single cup had that freaky mouth on it. One of the cups happened to shatter as I was looking. I managed to sweep up all the stuff into the garbage, and I threw it all outside. I threw the TV outside as well. The tickling feeling I felt on the palm of my hand as I carried the TV by its side didn't make me feel any better. I put a cleaner pair of shoes on just in case I would actually step on one of those mouth things while walking between rooms. Luckily, my phone was still working, and it didn't have a mouth. My friend sent me a photo of the inside of the back of his TV. Veins had wrapped around everything, and the batteries were bloated. I felt like puking. All of a sudden, everything was turning into a living thing. I took a hammer outside and smashed my TV 12 times. Purple blood began dripping out of the cracks. I went inside, not planning on even looking at that TV again. I sat on my couch, looking around so as to make sure no mutant creatures were crawling around in at least my living room. I texted Ashley about the thing going on in town. She lived only one town over, so she wouldn't have been caught up in this or informed me at all. After I had sent, my message wouldn't go through. I kept getting an error message. As I grew annoyed with the error, I recalled the sheet of paper with the dates. No, it couldn't be. Was it really? No. Hinting at something happening? Today? I fished the paper out and looked at the dates again. April 29th, 2023. My name. Although it was happening across town, but I guess I was supposed to be the main victim? I decided to look through each of the dates and the names to see if the paper was legit. Many of the calendar dates had common names beside them. I typed the first one into Google to see what event it referred to. All that came up were official websites for various cities named Kingston. Advanced search parameters didn't help yield anything either. Kingston was such a common name, so of course nothing was going to come up, but the 5 up the list only gave me the same lack of information. So was it a coincidence? I looked at each one of the surnames, searching for a name that was familiar to me. One name stumped me. It wasn't a person's name. It was the Paris Catacombs. Just those 2 words, with the date September 16th, 1788, written beside them. Thing is, the Paris catacombs weren't named the catacombs until 1786. So the paper it was written on had to have been written around then, rather than in 1529. At first, nothing came up about the Paris catacombs on that date. There weren't even any legends from 1778 in general. I decided to put the search terms in quotation marks, but nothing came up. I put a website-specific search parameter beside it in the search bar. Nothing. I put the search query in the quotation marks. I found something, at the very least. It was a post titled, Legends of the Paris Catacombs? The initial post asked for lesser-known legends from the catacombs. It seems so far-fetched, since the legends always seem to trend and get overblown. But one of the comments suggested something else. My great-grandparents lived in France. They had a story that had been passed down for a couple of centuries that had been told repeatedly throughout the whole of my life so far. Apparently, my grandpa's great-grandmother stumbled upon the catacombs and saw a yellow mist that moved on its own. She heard noises she had never heard before, coming from deep inside the grave, and things she couldn't describe poked out of the mist. I always thought something like that would have made the news, but apparently nobody talked about it, aside from her and 2 others, according to my grandpa. After a few dozen more empty searches, both with and without quotation marks, I came across one dated December 15th, 1900. It was named Flannan. Upon Googling it, I came across an event that happened on that date, in which 3 lighthouse keepers disappeared off the coast of Scotland. Their disappearance remains a mystery to this day, apparently. There are lots of articles about this. They're interesting. It turns out the cause really did seem unknown. Did it just fly off the radar? Did some creepy thing just happen and nobody knew about it? Someone could have died and no one would have ever been able to find them again. And they wouldn't know why. The person who disappeared had to have known why. They experienced it firsthand. If they weren't dead but trapped, nobody would know. I felt cold thinking about it. So I moved on to the next familiar surname. Looking up Rue Mast, 1915. Brought up images of a run-down house in Ohio. The origin of the house was unknown, but over the years, it was subject to easily disprovable legends and accusations of paranormal activity. Between the 1850s and 1910s, the property was owned by the Rue family. That was the time most of the paranormal stuff was alleged to have occurred. I couldn't find anything about what supposedly happened there on March 10th, 1915. In fact, there was a general lack of verifiable information about anything that went on there. Next, looking up November 24th, 1974, Ackley. It yielded results about a court case, one involving a house in New York that was ruled legally haunted by the New York Supreme Court back in 1991. The owner of the house had a reputation of being haunted by ghosts, and had to admit such a thing when selling the house. I couldn't find anything about what supposedly happened on November 24th, 1974. I emailed both the owners and the previous owners of the house, asking them if they knew what happened at the house owners on that day. One of them, I'm not going to say who for privacy, got back to me. This is what their message read. Is that a day you randomly selected? How did you get any clue something happened then? I'm checking for a hoax, I responded. A hoax? Who told you? I guess word always gets out somehow. Look, I'm not going to say a thing about what happened. It's too discomforting and I would sound insane, they replied. It was interesting. There'd be something they didn't want to mention out of fear of sounding insane. Since it was mentioned that ghosts casually interacted with those living in the house on a regular basis, especially during the 70s. The following calendar dates yielded the same type of thing. Some with no event popping up in any search results, or others in which an event had happened, and on the respective date which did come up. There are some dates that stood out to me for some odd reason. And then the last one. January 1st, 2029. Alt Smith. I'm guessing the lack of room on the page was the reason it was the last one written. But if predating all of those events was so important, wouldn't there be another page? I mean, if it all happened to fit entirely on one page, that would be a nice coincidence. Either way, something was going to happen to an Alt Smith on the first day of 2029. My phone's making an unsettling, erratic buzzing noise. I'm going to post this now, and I'm going to figure out this anomaly.